Hey everyone, this is Dennis, and we're in part 3 of my story, and this is the slow slog of alcoholism, which is just very, very ugly. And so I'm going to give you a quick analogy of how alcoholism is, and I sometimes lose people. I'm going to do it real quick. So there's a carnivorous plant called the pitcher plant, and the pitcher plant has this spout at the top, and it's very delicious for the bug. There's like some sort of nectar around it, and the bug loves it. And inside this, the pitcher itself, inside the plant, there's a cylindrical part of the plant, and then it goes into the digestive cavity, and inside the digestive cavity is something very delicious as well, but it's also the digestive cavity. So but the bug goes into the pitcher plant, and the fibers are such that the bug has nowhere else to go, can only go further, deeper in. And the more it squirms and tries to get out, the further it goes in. And it goes further, further in until it gets digested by, and obviously it gets killed by the plant that eats it. That's alcoholism. It only goes one way. You don't hear people just say they stop, maybe, but I have yet to hear anyone who just sort of like stops drinking without any giant event happening or something that causes them to really rethink their situation and have a serious look at themselves. So anyway, that's alcoholism. So I'm now in my life where I have tried to kill myself, and I said, you know, we're not going to do that anymore. That was pretty horrible. But there was probably no day that went by that I didn't wish I was dead. And I did not think of, I always thought of suicide, but I just didn't want to go through what happened before. And I truly was committing suicide. It was a very slow suicide, but I was killing myself, and I knew it. Here's one of the things that started happening is under my rib, right here on my rib, underneath it, it started hurting. And it started hurting more and more, and I knew what it was. I knew it was my liver. And I pretended like, oh, everything was fine. I'd go to the doctor, and he'd stick his fingers in there and be like, ah, but I'd be like, oh, everything's fine. And he saw that the enzymes were way off, and my liver was doing terribly. And that actually did have an impact on me. I'm going to tell you something else that happened. I went to a meeting, and there was a woman, and she was a nurse. Her name was Karen. This was many years ago. And she described the death of an alcoholic by alcoholism. And she described the most disgusting, painful, humiliating way to die that you can imagine. That also had an impact on me. And she went into great detail of how they die. And I knew that that would be me if I continued, but I didn't know what to do. I had to keep going. And I saw that. I went to meetings very, very early on, mostly because I had to for some reason or whatever. When I was in rehab, you know, they push you to go to meetings, and I did all that. But here's the thing that I really want to emphasize. What was going on with me was the thinking. The thinking was still incredibly obsessive and was getting more. Just when you think it can't get any worse, it was getting worse. My obsessive compulsive drinking and thinking were so entwined. I had a fear of running out. The number one thing was, did I have enough? And I needed to have more than enough to have enough. It was funny because, you know, you hear a lot of alcoholics, and I go to, you know, 3 or 4 different liquor stores because I don't want the person behind the counter thinking you might be an alcoholic. So, you know, you go towards the end, I didn't care. I was putting 3 big jugs of vodka on the belt, and I didn't care. Half the time I was drunk when I was in the liquor store, getting more. Because, you know, back then, Sundays, up here in Massachusetts, the liquor stores were actually closed on Sundays. And so you had to, you know, lay in a supply, or you had to drive to New Hampshire or whatever. So that was my life, though. I was living in a shitty little apartment. It was actually a nice apartment until I lived in it. And I was drinking, and I was working, and my life just consisted of me drinking and making enough money so that I could drink. there are a lot of details, a lot of gruesome details, and I'm just out of time. I don't want to go into it, but I need to really express the daily life of an alcoholic. At this point, I was drinking because I had to, and then there's a saying that somebody once said, it's very, very true. I drank to get sick. No, and then I drank to feel better. Yeah, I drank to get sick. Then I drank to feel better. Then I did it all over again. And that was me. I would get drunk every night. Then I had to drink to get better because I was going through withdrawals and everything. And then at night I'd get drunk, and then I'd do it all over again the next day. Did this for 16 years. 16 years. I robbed myself of 16 years. We often say, we say in the promises that we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. To be totally honest, I don't know of anyone who does not regret some of the things they did, that we do not regret the past. And one of the biggest things that I lost was 16 years, from the age of 20 to the age of 36. Those are really good years that I lost because I was just in a total blackout, gray out, whatever you want to call it, for those years. I was in and out of different rehabs and detoxes. I don't know how many. I never really counted, but there were a lot. And it was a horrifying 16 years. I tried relationships, but honestly, the booze came first, always. I needed the bottle before I ever wanted people. I ended up being just the way alcoholism wants you. It was just me alone with the bottle. And it just, I'm not going to end again on a happy note here, because it doesn't end on a happy note quickly. Perhaps the next one I will do on how I got sober, but it wasn't yet. It was 16 years of me living like I did, with the incessant thoughts of alcohol. Is there enough? Is there enough? How do I get rid of the bottles? I'd be having a conversation with somebody at work or whatever, right? And it'd be time for me to go drink or get a bottle or whatever. And they'd be talking to me. And I'm like, will you shut up? Don't you know I have to go get drunk? And this is how I was. I didn't care about anything else other than the bottle, other than the drink. Protect the drink. I had to do whatever I had to keep the drink. I had to get drunk. These were the most important things to me for 16 years. I lost family members. I lost most of my friends. And I didn't care. I would gladly trade all of this for a drink. And I did. And I can remember vividly living in my apartment and saying to myself, there will never be a day that goes by where I cannot get drunk. I have to. I did not see any way out. And I remember saying that to myself, sitting there saying, I have no choice. I have to drink. I was wrong. These are lies I told myself. I'm going to tell you something that you'll not hear at a meeting, right? The gift of progression. It sounds crazy, right? It sounds horrible. Why would you want to progress in your drinking? Because if I just stayed at a certain level, say I just got drunk every night and was able to function the next day, that would go on for the rest of my life, and I would be so miserable in this subpar way of living with alcohol as my master, but not letting me sink down low enough so that I had to find a different way. The gift of progression, right? The gift of progression. Things got worse and worse, and there was a fork in the road, live or die. And this is not hyperbole. This is really how it was. I was dying. Literally, my liver was giving out. My thoughts were going crazy. I was absolutely so close to dying that, it was just a matter of I maybe had 3 years and I'd be dead. And there was also all the drinking and driving that I did back then. So anyway, you come to a fork in the road because progression forces you to, and the lucky ones choose life, choose a better life. And we'll go into that in the next one. Anyway, this is Dennis, and I hope you have a good day. And I know that it's important to reflect on the worst parts of our drinking, our worst days, so that we are reminded where it will bring us if we have another drink. Thanks, and hope you have a good day.